It's no secret that high quality property management can take a lot of time, energy, and resources. Combine that with multiple platforms needed to perform the various tasks such as accepting applications online, screening applications, e-signing leases, collecting rent, handling maintenance issues, doing taxes each year, etc., and suddenly it can become overwhelming. Then you throw in tenant, owner, and service provider interactions, and it can get pretty time consuming. That's why TenantCloud was built and continues to be improved upon on a regular basis from the feedback given to us by our users. Our goal is to help you make more money with less effort, less time, and definitely less stress. TenantCloud's integrated screening options and fully customizable applications is another way that we do just that. Every landlord lists rentals, accepts applications and application fees, and screens tenants. We just make it a whole lot easier to do it all in one place. In this webinar, we will cover setting up application and application fees, application customization options, inviting prospective tenants to apply for your listings, how to screen applicants on TenantCloud, real-world application screening practices, and so much more. Join us as we dive into a quick webinar to show you how TenantCloud helps you focus more on the things you enjoy doing and less time, energy, and resources spent on keeping track of applications and screening online. When it comes to applications and screenings on TenantCloud, one of the first things that you're going to make sure that you do is to have your account set up to allow for online applications. When you first create a TenantCloud account, it does not by default enable online applications. So if that's something you want to accept, then you'll need to go ahead and start setting that up. So to do that, the first thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go to your settings page, and the application field is going to be right here. But before you do that, you're going to want to make sure that you have set up your marketing website. This is your free website through TenantCloud to allow your listings to be put onto a subdomain website where you can send users a link to apply to a specific property you have listed. And we'll cover that a little bit more here in a minute. But just know that the first place you want to go is here to the marketing website and to enable it, and then to put all the settings in, such as your photo, property description, gallery images, any people who are on your team who might be points of contact for people reaching out to inquire about a listing, and enable requesting tours, allow people to send questions about a listing, put your rental office address on here if you have one, and then any of your company or property management social media links if people are interested in looking at any of your social media sites. And then once you've done that, you just click Update Website, and that will enable your online listing website so that you can then accept applications. Once you've done that, you're going to want to go to your rental application button right here on this settings menu, and you're going to want to select that, yes, I want to receive rental applications online. And the follow-up question to that is then, do you want to receive rental application fees online? And in order to be able to select these checkboxes right here, you're going to have had to have gone to online payments. Now, again, this is just going back to some of the key things in your setting is you want to set up your marketing website, you want to set up your online payments, and then you want to go to your rental application. And so there are a few pieces, which is why this webinar is so important, is to make sure that all of the pieces are in place for you to be able to receive applications online, receive the application fees online, and so on and so forth. So here you'll see there's a button that says set up under Stripe, which means I have not yet set up a Stripe account in my TenantCloud account. I haven't linked one to my TenantCloud account. And I do have PayPal set up, and I do have Dwolla set up, which is why I was able to click those check boxes when I was on the rental application settings page. So if you do want to accept Stripe, you'll want to click Setup, and you'll want to connect your Stripe account to your TenantCloud account. Now keep in mind, Stripe allows debit and credit card transactions, and PayPal allows for PayPal balance transactions as well as ACHs if they have a bank account connected to it. and debit or credit card transactions. So whereas Dwolla is a ACH payment processor that does not have any payment processing fees, however, it's a little bit slower typically than PayPal and Stripe. PayPal can be as quick as instantaneous, and Stripe is generally 2 to 3 business days for the funds to come through. So most people, when they're setting up their online application settings to accept application fees online, they select either Stripe or PayPal and not Dwolla for the online application fee part, just because they get the funds a little bit faster. And as any landlord knows, your applicants, generally, you need to screen them as soon as you receive the application, and then they usually want an answer back pretty quickly, a lot of times same day. So you want to get that money in as quickly as possible to process that application. So once you have set those up, you'll want to go back to your rental applications tab, and you'll select, I want to receive applications online. You want to select, yes, I want to receive the rental application fee online. Select which payment processor you want to accept application fee payments from. And then you'll have a box that says, I want to invoice the application fee after accepting the application. Now, this is in the event that you want somebody to be able to go onto your listing and to be able to click apply now and not have to pay a fee right then and there before their application is actually able to be submitted. What happens is they click submit application and the application goes to you. And then once you've had a chance to review it and everything looks good prior to screening, you can then click a button that says send application fee request. And what that does is it sends the application fee request back to the applicant to say, hey, the landlord has reviewed your application. Everything looks good prior to screening. Please pay the application fee so that they can proceed with the screening of your rental application. And that's essentially what takes place. And so then the applicant will then have the ability to pay that application fee at that time, and then you can go ahead and proceed with the screening. The other section on here is transaction settings, asking you whether or not you want to make the application fee transactions visible to owners or not. If you select this box, it's going to make it invisible to the owners. And this is used by a lot of property managers, primarily who it's understood that the owner does not receive any application fee revenue. And that's generally pretty common with a lot of property management companies because they are doing the entire application process, and it really doesn't affect the owner in any way. And so a lot of property management companies will, for instance, charge a $50 application fee when the application screening cost that they might use might only cost $35 or $19.95. And so they're keeping $15, $20, or $30 off the top as their profit margin. And to cover the cost for their time spent screening the application, contacting the tenant, getting all of the required documents, and so on and so forth. So if you don't want the owner to be able to see your application fees because it doesn't affect them and doesn't have anything to do with them, you would just click this box. Otherwise, if you leave it unchecked, it will be included in the property owner statement report, and they'll be able to see it as part of the revenue to their rental property. The next thing that you'll want to see here is the custom terms of agreement. And you can actually click in here. This is what I've just copied and pasted in from a external document. So you can do that, or you can type up your own in here. You can see that you can type in this box. And this is just any custom terms of agreements that you may have regarding your application. The next section is the template field configurator. And I want to make sure that you don't overlook this. It's easy to overlook when you're going through because there's just a single link here, but this allows you to really fully customize the application. So when you click Change Scheme, it opens up an entirely new section. And pretty much every field in here, you can click to make it optional or required. And some sections you can even hide completely. For instance, if you do not allow pets at your rental property, you can just go ahead and click hide, and that hides your this section on the application, so people don't even know or think that you would allow pets. It's not optional or anything. It's hidden from them. Same thing with vehicles. If that's information that you don't care about and don't need, you can do that. Additional occupants, and so on and so forth. And all the other fields, even if you can't hide the entire section, you can make certain fields optional or required. And if you don't need the address, you can just select those there, and so on and so forth. You can also ask for additional records. So for instance, if you don't want to just know their last address, but you want to know their last 5 addresses, well, then you can require that they fill out this section 5 times. And so it's a pretty customizable application. In fact, it's one of the easiest and most customizable applications that I have seen in all my years in property management. And that's not just coming from the fact that I work at TenantCloud, but it is just in my experience. I've worked with many platforms, and I've never seen an application that is this easy to modify and this customizable. So I really think that this is something that you will get a lot of value out of, to be able to really fully customize your application. And that's actually not everything. The next section is your screening questions. On your screening questions, you can actually make these shown or hidden, and you can choose to make these short answer or yes or no questions. And you can also opt, if they choose yes or no, to require a short answer. So if they say, yes, I have had to file a petition of bankruptcy, you might want to know more information. Well, why did you? Whereas if they say no, there's no more information for them to provide. So you wouldn't necessarily need to check this box off requiring a short answer if that option was selected. And so again, there's a lot of customization that is available to you here to ask custom questions. I just do want to, this may come across as obvious, but I do want to make sure that I point out that because you have the option to create custom questions, you do want to make sure that those questions are within fair housing guidelines. You don't want to get in trouble with asking a question that you've created as a custom question that would violate anything part of the fair housing laws that could potentially get you in trouble with an applicant. And so just a word of caution as far as that goes. We do allow for full customization. It's just important that you follow all applicable laws when it comes to asking questions you are allowed to ask or are not allowed to ask. Now, the questions that you have created, you do have the option to delete them. For instance, I can create my own custom question right here and click create. And if for any reason I do no longer need that question, I can just hit this trash can button. And your custom questions can also have these same options on them. So again, full customization, it's really great. I really like the way that this application is set up. And you can see I just deleted that one. I don't need it anymore. It's gone. The next section is if you want them to fill out any additional documents. You can upload additional documents here that maybe you want them to print off, or maybe you want them to use a PDF application to sign or something outside of TenantCloud, or whatever it is. You can require an e-signature in TenantCloud, but this is like an actual physical document that you maybe don't want to put in a digital format or something. But you can put documents here and require them to fill them out or sign them, or just even just put them there for their reference. So that is an option. They'll see whatever files you have uploaded here when they go to fill out the application. The other part is the authorization. TenantCloud does have a agreement and authorization verbiage that applicants must agree to, which helps us and you make sure that we are strictly adhering to any federal and state laws regarding credit screenings and things of that nature, and providing this type of sensitive information. And so they will need to agree to this. You can add your own additional verbiage if your state or local area has additional requirements, or if just your property in general has additional requirements that's not included in here. You can go ahead and add your own additional verbiage. And the last thing is whether or not you want applicants to have to sign the rental application online prior to submitting it. If you select yes, then they cannot proceed with submitting the application without applying their digital signature to that application. Once you're done, you can click update and preview, or just simply update. And if you click update and preview, which I didn't add, I I messed with this stuff here. So let me see if I can do this now that I've messed with it. There we go. So it will show you a preview of what that application is going to look like, and any of these fields where they can upload photo IDs and things of that nature. If you had made any of these required under the scheme configurator, then it would have a little red asterisk here saying that this field is required to upload those specific documents. But this just gives you a really good understanding of what the application is going to look like when the tenant views it from their end. These are all the fields they're going to have to fill out and all the buttons they're going to have to click. And then this is how they sign it, agree to it, and then click to sign. And then there will be a button once they've signed it to say submit the application. Now, what's really cool about that marketing listing website that we talked about under the settings up here is that you're able to invite people to apply to a specific listing. So once you've got your marketing website set up, you can go over to your listings page and you can list a rental unit. Now, this is important because if you do not have a rental unit listed and it's not active, then you can't invite somebody to apply. So the first thing you're going to want to do after you have set up your marketing website through your settings here, which you can also access through this button, is you want to go and make sure you have at least one rental property listed. As long as you do, you'll be able to invite people to apply to that specific unit. Now, if they apply to this unit, you can change that. You don't have to move them into that unit in TenantCloud. So let's say somebody applies to the Modernist Unit 101, which this happens a lot. You'll have somebody who they tour, maybe they look at, you had a couple of vacancies in your property and one's a corner unit, one's by the pool, one's by the fitness center. And so when they first apply, maybe they apply to the one that's by the pool, and then they go home and talk about it and they're like, actually, we don't want to be around the pool at night because people are probably going to be loud and music and all that stuff, and that won't work for us. So we want the one by the fitness center. So they might have applied to Unit 101. You don't have to move them into Unit 101 in TenantCloud. You can always move them into the unit by the fitness center after they've applied. It's not a big deal. This is just, there just has to be an active listing for them to apply to. Now, you can see your unlisted units by going to the unlisted tab up here in the top right. And if you don't have a unit listed yet, just click list this unit and then go through setting up that unit to make sure that the rent amount is right, that any images that you want to upload to that listing are there, and amenities for that rental property, and so on and so forth. And once it's active, and you can see we have one here, you can then go to the applications tab and you can click invite to apply. And you'll see right here, it'll say select the listed property that you want them to apply to. And this is what I was just talking about. You have to have a rental property listed. So I would click the unit that I have listed is this unit 101. And I would go ahead and enter the email address of the person that I am wanting to apply. So you will want to collect the email addresses of anybody who's interested in your rental property. And you can enter it here, click send invitation, and it'll send them an invite to click a link, which will take them to your marketing website, to that listing, and they can proceed with filling out the application. Now, if someone fills out a paper application, you can add it manually. So if you don't want to invite anybody to apply to your rental online, and maybe they already submitted an application in your office, which does happen a lot, you can just click add application. And when you click add application, you'll be able to manually enter all of the information that they've provided you right here. And essentially you're filling out the application for them just as they would online if you had sent them an application invitation. So once they've submitted the application, then you can go back and you can view the application that you've submitted for them or that they've submitted. And so you can view all of that information right here. It's in each of its own separate blocks: rental history, employment history, references, documents you required them to fill out, terms of agreement that they agreed to, and all that good stuff, as well as their personal info over here, their monthly income, contact info, all of that information. Now, let's say you received an application or you entered an application and you wanted to go ahead and approve it, edit it, request more information, etc., you would just click this little 3-dot menu button right here. Anywhere you see this 3-dot menu button in TenantCloud usually means that there is a menu where you can do things inside of that menu. And you'll see here that you're given some of these options right here where you can edit or approve, or it's put it into review or decline it. You can also export it, print it, and so on and so forth. Now, you'll notice some of the fields are grayed out. And the reason that this field in particular right here is grayed out is because this person did not apply online. This is an application I manually entered, so I am not connected with this person on TenantCloud. This is just somebody that I have entered the information for them. They may not even know that I'm using TenantCloud as the screening platform or the application platform for managing my rentals. And so you can't send them a request for more information from TenantCloud because they're not connected with you on TenantCloud in this situation. If I needed to edit it, I could just click edit and go in and do that. Or also move in or archive. You can't do either of these until you've either approved or declined the application. So once you've done one of these actions, then these two options here will light up and give you the option to do something with this applicant. Jumping back out real quick to the list of applications, there is a way that you can sort it, and this is really cool. There's a way you can sort it, and you can also change your view. You can do a grid view or you can do a list view, whichever you prefer. And you can filter it a couple different ways. You can do it by whether the application is new, pending, approved, declined, or if you've archived it, or you can choose to view all applications like it is now. And you can also choose to do filters. And so you can do it by listing status, screening status, application type, or order by the time that it was submitted. As you're well aware of online applications or applications in general, some states or jurisdictions have requirements about screening or accepting applications first, or by most qualified or best qualified. And so this is for those of you who you have certain criteria you have to follow, and also according to your application, what it states there, how you determine if someone's approved or not. And a lot of times you need to know based on the time that that application was received or entered. The other cool thing is if you go into the view application, you can actually click this little purple icon. And again, anywhere you see this purple icon in TenantCloud, this means that you can view a history of some type regarding the page that you're on. So in this case, this is the application that I created, and it'll tell you that I have manually created the rental application for this property for this person. So that's really great to go back and you can see, especially if you have any sub-admins or you just want to look at the history of an application, you can go in and click that little purple icon and it'll show you pretty much everything that you've done on that application. Like here you can see I put a note that I needed additional bank statements for this applicant. So a lot of cool features as a part of the online application process on TenantCloud. And that's a lot of what we just covered is applicable to whether they applied online or in person. But again, just so you know, and just to remember, keep in mind, you can add it manually and you can invite people to apply online. And once the application is filled out and submitted, it will come into your applications here. And you can go ahead and view the application and you can run a screening report. Now, you will want to have made sure, again, that you had set up the application fees back where we were in the settings. And also on the listings page, which I didn't show that here, but jumping back real quick, there is an application fee field. So if you go into a listing and you click edit, there is a field right here that says you can change it on an individual listing level. So you notice I didn't have this selected. So what that meant is somebody could apply to this rental without paying an application fee up front. Now, that doesn't mean that I can't charge them an application fee after the fact. I can still charge them an application fee with that option that I showed you under the settings tab where I want to send them the request to pay the fee after they've applied. So if you're doing that, you won't want to charge it right here, because if I enter this and say, okay, $50 for the application fee, this is going to require that anybody applying to this specific listing has to pay this $50 before they can submit the application fee to me. And so if I don't want to do that, I just click cancel. Otherwise, I can click resubmit listing and it'll update it. But just so you know, you can do that on an individual unit listing level. That does not have to be just a global setting under your settings. You can do that. You can change the application fee settings on the individual listing level, which is great. Now, if you do not have an application fee set up and required at the time of applying, you can still do it at a couple different points. You can do it when you view the application. There would be a button here that you could send them to request the application fee. Now, I don't have it on this because this was already submitted, they already paid. But if you were to require the application fee, there would be a button here on this menu that would say to send them the request to pay the fee. The other way that you could do it is when you go to run a screening report, each of these plans will allow you to send the fee or the invoice directly to the tenant to pay. So for instance, on this basic plan, if I click select, there's going to be two buttons that pop up. One is continue, which would allow me to proceed with doing the screening and paying the $19.95 on my own. This would be used in the event that I charged the tenant an application fee of $50 on that listing and they paid it at the time that they applied. So now I have $50 and I'm only going to pay $19.95 to checkers. So I would click continue and go through and pay for it, and then it would automatically screen them and it would come back with a result of the information that I asked for, and I could then make a decision on whether I wanted to approve them or not. Alternatively, if I did not require the tenant to pay the application fee up front and it was agreed upon or outlined in my terms and conditions on my application that they would be required to pay for the screening after they submitted their application, well, now I would click request from tenant. And when I click request from tenant, then it would go ahead and send them an email with a request and a link stating your landlord would like you to pay for the application fee for checker. It's $19.95. You can use this link to pay it, and so on and so forth. They would then go in and pay that invoice, and likewise, it would automatically process it inside your TenantCloud account, and you would get a copy of that screening report, and it would come back to here, and you would be able to view the screening report. Now, if you already had a screening report results, it would say view screening instead of view the pricing. You would be able to go ahead and click and view the screening results. And then you could go and view the application and choose whether or not you wanted to approve them or not. So you could click this button here and you could say, I've already approved this one, but you could say I want to decline the applicant or I want to move them in or whatever. You can't move them in. You can't archive an application until you've made a decision on the application. You either have to approve them or decline them, and then you can go ahead and archive the application. And so that is, in a nutshell, it's pretty simple how to do the screening. Application comes in, you run a screening report. The only thing that changes, the only variable in this entire experience is where and when the tenant pays the application fee. Do they pay it at the time that they applied from your listing website? Do they pay it after you've reviewed the application and you send them a link to pay it, but prior to screening? Or do you send them the actual link from the screening package itself to pay it on their own? And that payment is directly between the applicant and the screening agency. And then, but everything else remains the same. Whoever pays for it, however it's paid for, it will always come back as being processed in your account, and you'll be able to view the screening results all here in your TenantCloud account. Now, a few things in regard to the application fee settings is that we wanted to touch on is just setting qualifying criteria to make sure that you're getting quality tenants. And every property is a little bit different. Every area is a little bit different. And I've worked at different properties in different cities and in different places in the cities. And each of the properties had different requirements, including some properties that were under the same management company. And so, but it is important that you do set some type of qualifying criteria, because your applicant needs to know how they could potentially get disqualified from your rental. It's important that you set those criteria out in front and that they agree to those criteria prior to applying, because again, you want to avoid any fair housing issues and any other application issues that may come up as a part of you running their background or credit check, because there are a lot of rules that you need to follow when it comes to the Fair Credit Act and the Fair Housing Report, or the Fair Housing Act. And you just want to make sure that one of the biggest things is you set your rental criteria for how somebody could potentially get declined if they were to apply to your property. Because as long as it's laid out front, then people may not apply, because automatically they might see, oh, I have to have a credit score of 620 to apply to qualify. Well, they might know right off the bat, maybe they pulled their credit that morning, and they'll be like, well, I don't have a 620 credit score, so I'm not going to apply. I'm not going to waste my time, your money, my money, etc. So make sure that you're setting your qualifying criteria up, and make sure that it is something that the applicant does have to acknowledge, and that it answers any questions that you need to pre-qualify people who are considering applying to your property. Saves you a lot of time. There's a lot of things to take into consideration when it comes to setting up your rental criteria and what is allowed in your rental property and what is not allowed in your rental property, and some things that you might not even think of, such as, well, why do you not allow pets? What are the reasons for that? And is that really a good thing, or am I losing out on a ton of potential renters? So just keep those things in mind when you are setting up your rental criteria. And the last part about all that is, it is important to get previous rental references. And me personally, this is even more important than just about every other aspect of a person's screening, is what are your previous rental experiences? What have other landlords experienced? Do you have damage costs from a previous rental where you just left it a complete wreck? Or do you have no damages? And do you have a lot of parties and stuff like that late at night causing noise disturbances, and so on and so forth? And so just stuff like that. And so getting previous rental references whenever possible is always a good idea. It is interesting that a lot of landlords do not actually provide a lot of that information when you send them previous rental reference requests. A lot of times they just stick to very specifics, like, did they pay their rent on time? Yes or no. Do they have an outstanding balance? Yes or no. But the question, would you rent to this renter again if they were to apply to your property? A lot of landlords, because of the way the question is phrased, a lot of landlords won't answer that question, because it's almost impossible for them to say yes or no, especially if they in turn have rental criteria that applicants have to adhere to and qualify for. Because that applicant, they may have moved out, but they might have qualified based on criteria from a year ago, and things may have changed now. Maybe they did require a 600 or 620 credit score when they applied a year ago, and they had it, and now they don't. And so answering that question, would I approve this person if they applied again, when it's phrased that way, a lot of landlords you'll find are not going to answer a question like that. So you may want to come up with alternative questions to ask previous rental landlords for references, to be a little bit more maybe specific and not violate any fair housing laws, or potentially get them in trouble with answering a question that they really can't answer. So moving on, though, the other part of all of this is when you do decline an applicant. When somebody does apply and they do not match your qualifying criteria and you decline them, you need to make sure that you are following both federal and state and possibly even local laws and regulations when it comes to keeping applications, but also notifying the applicant that you have declined them. And so TenantCloud does not approve or decline anybody. That is completely up to the landlord that is processing the application and making that decision. And so it is your responsibility to make sure that you inform the applicant of why you declined that person. If you've ever applied for a loan or credit card or anything like that, and you've ever received a decline letter, you should have received a letter that states exact reasons why they declined you. And so you'll want to make sure that you notify the tenant of that and be very specific and very clear according to the Fair Credit Act. So if you're not up to speed on that, I would highly recommend that you go and research the Fair Credit Act and the Fair Housing the Fair Housing Act, and just make sure that you are adhering to all of the rules and requirements when it comes to declining an applicant for whatever reason, just to protect yourself and your rental property. As you can probably see by now, TenantCloud is a full end-to-end property management software solution. In this webinar, we have covered setting up application and application fees, customizing your application, inviting prospective tenants to apply for your listings, how to screen applicants, real-world application screening practices, and much more. Whether you are a DIY landlord or you manage other owners' rentals, or you are a combination of those two things where you manage other owners' rentals along with your own, TenantCloud's powerful system will automate the majority of your daily tasks, simplify life for your tenant and owner interactions, and give you powerful tools to be in sync with your maintenance teams, assistant managers, and leasing agents. Whether it is the incredibly convenient integration of fully customizable applications, the ability to accept online application fees from multiple payment processors, or the fully integrated screening options available to screen your potential tenants, TenantCloud has a solution for your property management needs. If you have not done so already, you can sign up for a free TenantCloud account today at www.tenantcloud.com.